The bamboo stands like an isle in the night. Step quietly and let the path hold you. Moonlight threads itself between tall stalks, silvering their smooth green skins and turning each leaf into a thin, restless whisper. Beneath your shoes, the path gives a soft, crushed sound. Pebbles shifting, a little rustle of compacted earth, and each footfall makes, for a moment, the only small movement the grove has authorized. Breathe with that step. Inhale as your foot lifts, a slow, gentle filling. Exhale as it finds the ground, long and soft, and let the weight of your body be trusted by the earth beneath you. There is a hush here that is not absence, but a kind of careful listening. The air is cool in the throat, carrying the faint, rounded scent of damp wood and moss, like pages of an old book turned somewhere under the trees. Above, the bamboo stalks lean toward one another in companionable arcs, their long shadows knitting together into a roof of quiet. Look only as far as you need to see the next line of stalks, the next patch of moonlight on the gravel. There is no need to hurry. Let your attention be the length of a breath and the distance of one slow step. If you would like to keep walking, stay with this track. There's more light ahead. You move deeper now. The entrance gate behind you a small wooden frame that the night has already softened with shadow. And ahead the avenue narrows and becomes almost like a channel for sound. The bamboo here rises like columns set in a temple of leaves, each stalk straight and patient, their joints small and regular, as if someone has bound them with patience alone. When the breeze comes, it travels in a thin, thrilling ribbon, sliding up the tubes and turning leaves into tiny flutes. The sound is at once inside and outside you, a distant hush and a close companion. Match that hush. Breathe in with the lifting of the leaf. Breathe out as the leaf settles. There is a rhythm to walking beneath bamboo that asks you to slow. The path curves in a soft arc, and as you follow it, you notice how your steps have settled into a quieter counting. The same 2 or 3 syllables of presence, the slow metronome of moving forward and letting go. At times, your foot catches on a single bright pebble, and the tiny, crisp note that follows is like a punctuation in the dark, a reminder that the world consists of small details. You notice the coolness of the stone against your ankle if your trousers brush it, the slight squeak of leather against gravel. These small sounds are not intrusions. They are the grove's way of speaking back. Pay attention to them as one pays attention to the first lines of a familiar letter. As you walk, the bamboo seems to lean in, not to enclose but to welcome, offering a sequence of framed views. A flash of sky there between 2 stalks, a ribbon of moonlight on wet leaf, the suggestion of a stream heard rather than seen. Sometimes a thin shaft of lantern light appears ahead, the kind that has been carried for a long time and bears the dust of many evenings. It does not call loudly. It simply rests on a stone, a small square of warmth that the night accepts without surprise. There is, in that small square, the promise of a pattern. Light as something that can be arranged, laid down like a series of stitches along the darkness. The air shifts, and you become aware of the river before you see it. A soft, persistent undernote like someone counting backwards very quietly. The stream runs close to the path here, its water threading over pebbles and laying a steady, unshowy music under the rustle of leaves. It is the kind of river that knows the names of the stones it passes and takes them quietly with it. You step where the path comes closer to the bank, and you feel a subtle change in the air. Cooler, a little more scented with wet mineral and the green depth of leaves. Let your breath match the river for a moment. Inhale in, wide and clear. Exhale like water sliding past the edge of a stone. Pause here if you need. Rest one hand on a stalk. On its smooth skin, you feel the small ridges and coolness, the faint warmth that comes from a living thing at night. The bamboo does not demand your touch, but accepts it like an old friend. Press your palm lightly, and note how the skin of the stalk seems to hold your warmth for an almost absurdly short time before returning to its own cool. Feel the subtleties of contact. The grain under your fingertips, the way your weight shifts from one foot to the other, the steady, small clock of your heart. With each exhalation, you might imagine a thread loosening that was once knotted in your shoulders. With each inhalation, a brief filling, as if the grove were filling you with a simpler air. Your path leads you to a small bridge, modest and close to the water, its stones sheened by moss and a faint film of rain that came earlier in the evening. The bridge has the sort of age that makes it gentle. No sharp edges, only rounded corners and the faint indentations left by many feet. When you step on it, the sound is muffled, the gravel replaced by stone, and the feet's conversation with the earth becoming softer. Look down for a moment at the slow, patient passage of the river beneath. The water's surface reflects the moon in tiny, traveling patches, like little tiles of light that have been placed and allowed to float away. On the far side of the bridge, there is a clearing of low light, where the bamboo opens its ranks and lets the sky reach down to touch the earth with a small, calm hand. In that opening, you can see things more clearly. A low fence that marks the path, small stones arranged as if for sitting, a thin strip of wooden railing that keeps travel steady where the ground might slope. It is here, in this hush of open space, that you notice a small imperfection, a split in the railing where the wood has loosened from the post, a gap in the woven side that makes the edge look unfinished. It is nothing urgent, nothing to call alarm, only a small place that asks for attention, a place where care might be offered and a stitch made. There is a particular color to small repairs at night. The hands that mend them move differently, slower and more deliberate, as if they are choosing the pace so as not to startle the dark. You imagine fingers picking up a narrow strip of bamboo, long and supple, pulling its edges smooth, pressing it into place with the quiet pressure of a thread. The act of mending becomes, in the mind, a soft ceremony, a careful selection of material, the folding and threading, each loop a tiny vote against neglect. This thought is not story, but instruction in a softer language. When something is tended in a small way, light follows. You are not alone in thinking this. Ahead, somewhere between the shadows and the glimmer of lanterns, an air of company hangs like a promise without the insistence of voices. Perhaps a keeper of the grove walks a little further on, their presence a low silhouette that moves with the same unhurried attention you carry. They may carry a coil of thin twine, or a handful of paper panes for lanterns, or a small kit of simple tools tucked into a cloth. Whatever they carry, it speaks of maintenance rather than ceremony, of acts done because they matter rather than to be seen. You catch, for an instant, the soft sound of fabric against wood, the small, contented rustle that belongs to hands who know how to fold and to fit. Let the idea of help be a comfort rather than a summons. There is a certain trust in the grove. Paths are kept because someone tends them in the night. Stones are replaced because hands have learned to read the language of slipping things. In the same way, your own small attentions count. The way you align your body to the earth, the small vows you make to breathe, the decision to walk slowly, Each is a stitch in a larger fabric. Consider for a moment the metaphor as it becomes practical. An unnoticed crack in a rail becomes a worry at the edge of thought, and mending it is the act of turning attention into repair. Breathe with that image. Inhale as if drawing in the material to be used. Exhale as if laying it down with care. The sounds of the grove are layered like a quiet orchestra. Foremost are the near things. Your footsteps on pebbles, the almost imperceptible scraping of bamboo where stalks meet, the soft creak of old wood in its sleep. Under that is the mid-layer of water and insects, the river's steady whisper, a cricket's measured chip somewhere in the low brush, that keeps time without demanding notice. Far off, and used sparingly, a bell's faint voice rings once in a while, low and respectful, a sound that leans into the night and then lets go. These layers do not rush over one another. They rest like hands on a table, each doing its part. As you move onward, notice the way light and shadow play upon the path. Some stones are washed in moon, pale and cold, while others are deeper in shade and hold a kind of velvet black. Between these zones, little lanterns hang at intervals from bent bamboo arms, small paper panes bound in light wooden frames, each one a deliberate punctuation on the dark. They cast a gentle, patterned glow, squares and rectangles of warm color that land on leaves and on faces if a face turns toward them. Sometimes they are yellow like the inside of a warm room, sometimes a softened, careful orange that reminds you of tea steam. The repetition of these lights creates a rhythm, a row of lights, a small stitch of brightness, another row. In time, you may come to measure your steps by these stitches as much as by your breath. There is an economy to the labors you see. Everything kept small, everything kept deliberate. A lantern is not hung simply to banish the night, but to offer just enough company for the path. A strip of bamboo is not woven as a monument, but as a practical mending. Such acts seem to make the grove more human without imposing human noise. They are, in essence, modest kindnesses, tiny, necessary repairs that make travel smoother for the next person and for the trees themselves. Think for a moment of the last small kindness you were offered, the sort that required little of anyone but somehow changed your evening. Hold that memory like a pebble in your palm, and notice its weight. Your steps slow as the path opens into an area where the ground softens underfoot, and moss grows thick on stones placed for sitting. A low bench sits beside the bank, its surface cool and slightly damp, a place that invites you to rest. You may take a seat if you wish. If you stay standing, allow your knees to relax and your shoulders to loosen, imagining, with each breath out, a tiny untying of held tension. The bench is not an altar but a companion. It offers support without demanding anything in return. Settle and feel the bench take your weight with a quiet good sense. From this vantage point, you can look back along the avenue you have traveled and see how the lights stride like a measured hand across the dark. You notice again the bridge, the trace of the river, the small gap in the railing that first drew your attention. In the clearing beyond, a single figure moves, no more than a shape between shadow and lamp, bending low to retrieve something from a cloth sat upon the ground. They work slowly, as if their hands remember a looped line and know which knot will hold. You do not approach. There is no need. Their industry is part of the place's texture. Their presence is like the low, constant hum that makes a house feel lived in, the kind of sound that ensures you will not wake alone in the dark. The thought of hands working in the night brings up the motif that threads together what you have felt so far, the motif of mending. In the grove, mending is practical and also quietly ritual. Strips of bamboo pulled long and thin, paper panes placed within frames, twine wrapped around joints until the connection is snug and plain. Imagine these small processes as if you had time to watch each movement unfold. Fingers selecting the right strip, the gentle flick of a knife to shave an edge, the slow folding of paper so that the light might rest within it more easily. The gestures are simple and repeated, and so become meditative. Repetition here is not boredom, but a slow, careful insistence that the world can be tended. Let this idea extend to your own practicalities. To mend is to attend. The mind that is worried can be approached like the railing with a gap. Notice where the worry makes the path feel insecure, and then place a thought of attention, small, resolute, alongside it. Perhaps you imagine taking up a narrow piece of bamboo and laying it along the break. Perhaps you imagine drawing a lantern close to cast a gentle light on a confusing edge. These are not cures or promises. They are gestures and practices that reshape how you move and, in doing so, how you breathe. The keeper, always more a presence than a person, moves toward the fence with the deliberate step of someone who knows the place intimately. They carry a coil of thin fiber, and upon their shoulder a small folded lantern that waits like a reserved thought. When they kneel to the broken railing, their actions are almost inaudible. The stretch of fiber, a practiced knot, the press of palm to join two pieces so that they sit close and true. It is possible to learn something from watching a small repair take shape. The act of witnessing can itself be a kind of mending. To see attention given to what was loose is to breathe a little easier, as if the world has been taught how to hold again. You consider the pattern of light their lantern makes when it is opened. A small geometric window that lays a patch on the ground and outlines the surrounding moss. When several of these windows are arranged across a clearing, the darkness loses its sameness, becoming instead an organized, gentle pattern. Darkness is not banished, but set into a friendlier shape. The metaphor is simple and steady. To arrange light into pattern is to make the night legible, to create places your eyes and your mind can rest. Repeat to yourself the word stitch as you watch this, not in haste, but as a soft, steady syllable. Let it synchronize with the slow counting of your breath. There is a small basket on the ground filled with narrow strips of bamboo, each one worn smooth where hands have handled it before. You imagine taking one. Its edge is cool with a faint scent of sap, and the memory of sunlight threaded through green. You would press it gently into the split in the railing, using it as a reinforcing stitch, bending the strip until it yields, and then knotting it with careful twine. Visualize the action slowly, deliberately, like the opening of a fan. Each loop you make with the twine is a witness, each press of the palm a promise to leave things better than you found them. These gestures transform small neglect into care. There is, in the grove's keeping, an unspoken rule. Do not overdo brightness, do not overpraise action. Keep things small, keep them true. The lanterns are lit one by one at the keeper's pace, and their light is not loud but turned kindly toward the ground, toward the path and the hands that mend. When the first lantern opens, you might feel a warmth bloom at the base of your skull, the peculiar comfort of a practical light that knows where to rest. The second lantern makes a pair of squares on the stone, and your eyes learn the interval between them. You imagine the keeper passing a strip to someone else without words. The motion is fluid, habitual, and the exchange itself is a soft covenant of communal care. For a while, the clearing is a place of concentrated work and concentrated quiet. Fingers move with the mechanical memory of repetition, and the sound of twine being pulled taut is as familiar as the wind in the leaves. The act of mending becomes a slow music. Each knot is made, each strip set, and with each small completion the light in the clearing acquires a new pattern. Patches of glow that translate the night into something comfortable to look upon. In this way, the darkness is not eradicated, but invited to be known. It is given a face composed of little lights and joined fragments. As the pattern builds, you may notice how your own mind follows suit, finding a similar rhythm in thought. Worries that had been sharp-edged begin to fold, small and manageable. They do not vanish because you ask them to, but they adjust their shape in the presence of attention. The simple labor of another becomes subtly a lesson, that small hands and calm time can turn a raw break into a seam. Inhale and imagine your concerns laid along the path, each one receiving a strip of care. Exhale as if the knot holds. A soft breeze brushes the lantern panes and sends a ripple of shadow across the stones, as if the pattern of light is alive and thinking. The insect chorus below it continues, steady and unhurried, like a distant machine whose only job is to ensure that the night is not silent enough to make you anxious. There is no hurry to finish. The keeper and their companions, if there are companions, do not hurry. Their movements are deliberate because the world they tend moves at the same patient tempo. You allow yourself to slow to match them, to let your steps become fewer, your breath longer. Now pause and notice the way your body responds. Perhaps your chin has been tipped slightly forward. Soften it and allow the neck to lengthen. Feel your shoulders drop unblinkingly in a single surrendered motion. With each out-breath, imagine a small knot unceasingly loosening at the nape, and with each in-breath, invite a gentle filling as if someone were slowly laying down a warm cloth over your chest. The grove holds these gestures. It registers the small kindnesses you do to yourself by breathing as if it were a reply. You stand, or sit, or remain where you are, and the path guides you further. There is more to see, and yet nothing presses you forward. The bridge and the hidden keeper recede as your attention wanders along the line of lanterns that now mark the way. Ahead, the trees bow slightly, and between them you can almost perceive a new opening, a place where the ground levels and the air softens. It promises a further discovery, small and intimate, and you feel the quiet, comfortable pull of curiosity. The mending at the railing has begun, and the light is taking on a pattern. Beyond, something else waits to be touched by the same patient hands. You move on, each step a slow agreement to stay present, and the grove responds with 100 small details. A leaf fallen in a perfect fold, the delicate ripple of the river past a stone, the tiny, deliberate footprints of a creature that passed earlier. The pattern of light ahead deepens, and the sense that the night is being arranged for you grows steady. There is a gentle anticipation in the chest, not of excitement, but of readiness, as if an old book were about to be opened to a passage remembered by the hands that have read it before. Just beyond the second bend, the path softens into a looser soil, and you notice a collection of stones placed in a rough circle, each one moss-swathed and waiting. Someone has left a small kettle there on a low fire long cooled, its presence a muted declaration of hospitality. It is not for you to drink unless you wish. It is enough that the kettle sits like a thought that has been left to steep. The idea of warmth, even if only as a remembered warmth, travels in the body. You can imagine reaching out to touch the metal and feeling its residual heat, the trace of hands that have warmed themselves before you arrived. Nearby, in the shade of low bamboo, a roll of prepared lantern panes lies ready. The keeper has worked quietly, laying out frames and paper, and there are fine shavings of bamboo where a strip has been trimmed. This is a place that expects careful action. The night seems to encourage small, skillful gestures, to fold, to trim, to fix. As you step into this softer opening, you notice that the bench here, lower, more like a contoured stone, is almost inviting you to lie back, to look up through the bamboo into the patch of sky beyond, and let your eyeballs fall heavy with the thought of sleep. At this point, the mending motif presses closer. The keeper, having set a pane into a simple frame, lifts it up and holds it to the lantern's soft light. The paper diffuses the flame so that it becomes a warm square rather than a singular point. The light, when placed along the path, reveals not just the ground but the small habits of the trees, the way a knot in the bark holds a shadow, the way a leaf has curled under itself. You see, in your mind, the deliberate hands working to transform darkness into patterns of gentle warmth. The action is humble and it is sufficient. There is space here to let thought dissolve into sensation. Your breath lengthens, not because you force it, but because the grove's tempo is a language your body has learned to understand. With each inhalation, draw in the coolness that lives under leaves. With each exhalation, allow a quietness to expand across your shoulders and down into your limbs. Think, if you will, of the fall of a single leaf, drifting down like an hourglass. Watch its slow journey in your mind, and let that slow journey mark the pace of your head and chest. The leaf falls and the lantern burns, and the mending takes place. Together, these small acts are enough to reframe the night. The keeper moves to tie the final knot on the railing but does not yet tighten it fully. Instead, they place the loop and hold it as if testing its balance. Another hand reaches into the basket and withdraws a single strip of bamboo, its edge warmed by the palms. There is a small exchange of objects and a small passing of responsibility from one pair of hands to another, and the light in the clearing grows more patterned, as if a new voice has joined a choir. You feel, in your chest, a similar soft answering, an inclination to loosen something that has been held too tight, to allow more air into a place that has been constricted. There is still more to the path ahead. A final curve that promises wider ground and a resting place. Perhaps moss enough for you to lie back and let your spine sink into the earth's polite embrace. But for now, you are present to this small theater of mending, to the way light arranges itself at human scale, to the way a tiny stitch can make a path feel whole again. The quiet labor continues, patient and careful, and you realize that to be here, walking, watching, breathing slowly, is already a kind of tending. As hands move toward completion, the world tightens gently around the small action. Light occupies its new pattern, and shadows adjust, softening the hard edges of worry you carried with you into the grove. The knot is almost made. The strip is almost woven. There is a delicate, suspended sense of repair about to conclude, and beyond it the bench and the mossed stones promise a place to settle deeper still. Your steps have been few for some time. The breath you keep is long and measured, and the grove offers one more small invitation. to remain a little longer and to witness the last thread being drawn through. The keeper's hands finally draw the last thread through the loop, and, for a moment, time seems to narrow around that one small completion. The twine settles against the bamboo like a seam in a well-worn garment, and the railing, which had looked vulnerable a heartbeat before, becomes a line that reassures the eye. You breathe in as the knot is pulled taut, a deliberate, almost ceremonial inhalation that fills the ribs and quiets the edges of thought. You breathe out as the excess fiber is tucked away, a long letting go that feels, absurdly, like the resolution of a sentence. The clearing takes on its new shape. Patches of gentle light fall across moss and stone, their edges softened by the paper panes, and the darkness between them is no longer a single, empty thing, but a pattern you can rest within. That pattern itself is a kind of language, not noisy or urgent, but steady enough to be readable by the body. You notice how your eyes move differently now. They travel from one square of glow to the next, rather than skittering across a map of unknowns. Your breath follows them without command, slowing because the world has slowed, and because slow things have a way of inviting slow responses. There is a small pleasure in this, no triumph, only the private satisfaction of seeing care completed, of watching something broken become whole through patient hands. Around you the grove seems to settle, as if acknowledging the small mending and allowing itself to breathe with you. The bamboo leans in close, their pale shafts catching the lantern light and throwing it back in long, soft strokes, so that the whole avenue appears to have taken on a gentle embroidery of shadow and glow. The river continues its quiet counting beside the path, a low, dependable voice whose rhythm matches the length of your exhale. The insects keep their own modest cadence, a soft, pulsating background that fills spaces between the larger sounds like the gentle sibilance of turning pages. There is no need to name anything more than this. Light paired with darkness, hands paired with tasks, breath paired with step. You find yourself rising slowly from the bench, the bench's coolness reluctant to let you go, and you move toward the wider curve of the path that promises the mossed circle and the softer ground. Each step now is intentionally sparse. You allow half of your attention to rest on the earth beneath your feet, and the other half to regard the pattern of lights that have been placed like small islands across the dark. As you pass a lantern, it brushes the side of your face with warm, paper-filtered light, and for a moment the world on that side of your sight is simple and plain. Grain of wood, vein of leaf, the little indent where a stone has worn into a smoothness. These tiny details are not demands. They are invitations to look closely and to be satisfied with small things. Ahead, the circle of stones waits and invites you down. You step into its quiet center, and the ground, moss-soft and forgiving, receives the soles of your feet and seems to shape itself to hold you. There is a sense of being accepted, not observed, an uncomplicated kind of welcome that requires nothing more than your presence. The keeper's light now falls across the ring like a careful canopy, and you notice how shadows settle between the stones in regular intervals, making little dark crescents that feel oddly comforting. The kettle left upon a low stone remains cool and emblematic, a quiet signal that warmth has been thought of and offered even if you do not partake. There is a temptation, in a place like this, to let the mind attempt to catalogue every small comfort, as if by naming them you could keep them. Instead, allow yourself to let the details come and go like small birds landing and lifting. The smell of damp earth rising from the moss, the sensation of cool air on the inside of the elbow, the particular way a stalk of bamboo hums when the breeze passes. Let the act of noticing be brief and tender. You do not need to hold any one thing long enough to wear it thin. Rather, accept each sensation like a pebble you lift and set down again, each one contributing to the weight of being present. If you wish, you may lie back now upon the soft moss, letting the ground support the curve of your spine, or you may remain seated and tilt your head onward to the patch of sky that peeps through the bamboo canopy above. Either choice is right. The grove does not prefer one posture to another, and the grove's acceptance mirrors a kindness you can practice for yourself. As you settle, notice the small differences your body makes in relation to the earth. Where weight gathers, where it disperses, the minor adjustments that your muscles perform without fuss. Let these adjustments be met with appreciation rather than critique. You are learning to let weight be received rather than always carried. From this lower place, the lantern-lit pattern looks different. The squares of glow now hover at the level of your sight or higher, and their warmth reaches you like quiet hands. Stars are visible in the slatted sky. Thin points of hard, cool fire distant enough to feel like punctuation rather than commentary. Between them, the moon, if it is present, sifts a softer light, thinner than the lantern's warmth but wider in reach, and the two kinds of light do not compete but complement. One intimate and human, the other broad and indifferent, both useful in their ways. Your breath is the third kind of light. Private, inward, yet visible here, because you attend to its length and flow. Let your breath become a steady tide. Breathe in as if you were drawing the coolness that lives under the leaves into the center of your chest, and breathe out as if you were allowing that coolness to spill across your shoulders and down your arms. Each exhalation is the act of setting something down. Each inhalation is a small invocation of the grove's air. Do not worry about doing it perfectly. Simply continue with the soft rhythm that arises. Countless creatures beneath the floor of this path have practiced their own slow, necessary movements for centuries. Match that patience and the groove of your breathing will deepen naturally. The thought of mending returns, gentle and insistent, but now it feels internalized. You might imagine, with the relaxation settling into your limbs, a tiny ritual you could carry. When the mind tightens, name the place where it is taught. Imagine placing a strip of bamboo along that place. Tie it with a slender, careful knot. The activity is at once simple and symbolic. It needs nothing more than attention and an intention to make small amendments. Picture the knot holding. Picture the groove of your shoulder softening a degree. Picture the lantern's glow illuminating the repaired edge. In your imagination, the repair holds as well as any physical stitch. The keeper moves among the lanterns with an economy of motion that feels slow only because it is precise. Their hands are neither young nor old to the point that age matters. They are hands that have learned to do a certain set of small tasks well. You hear the soft scrape of a tool on bamboo, the whisper of paper being smoothed into its frame, the almost inaudible knotting of fiber. These sounds are not background noise, but deliberate actions that the grove seems to record and use as part of its constitution. Each one is a little punctuation, a note that says, "This place is tended." Allow those notes to rearrange whatever small anxieties you brought here into less sharp shapes. Time, in the grove, is measured not by watches but by small sequences. The lighting of a lantern, the pulling of a knot, the fall of a single leaf. You can take refuge in this kind of time if you choose. It does not demand you be empty of thought, only that you permit thoughts to be treated as objects you might lay along the path and examine. Take any single worry and imagine it as a slender, brittle twig. Hold it up to the light of a lantern and see its length. Decide whether it needs trimming or whether it can be woven into a longer, stronger strip. This imagined craftsmanship is not an eraser. It is a means of altering relationship with what concerns you, so that the concerns no longer pull at you with the same sharpness. As your body becomes heavier and the moss more accommodating, you begin to feel the edges of consciousness simplify. Faces of worry recede into shapes of gray cloth. The detailed narratives that earlier in the evening kept replaying themselves begin to lack color. This is not a forced forgetting, but a natural settling. The same slow settling you watch when water calms after a stone is dropped into it. Allow that movement to be graceful. You do not need to chase away thoughts. Simply let them sink a little, like leaves finding their way into the slow undercurrent of the river. The river's tone changes as you lie back. Close up it is a soft, immediate sound, the slide of water over a stone. From where you rest you can hear the river's deeper, steadier register, as if it were resonating with the very shape of the valley. Imagine this sound cradling you. Imagine the river's voice making a space of moderation around your chest and lungs. Breathe with this broader rhythm now. Inhale as the river lifts a sound. Exhale as it falls away. Let the cadence become longer, the intervals of silence inside each breath widening like a room opening its doors. Your lids feel heavier, and the world behind your eyes begins to arrange itself into slow imagery. The latticed glow of paper panes folding like fans. The slow sweep of bamboo shadows resembling the rise and fall of silk waves. The lantern light forming soft ornaments on the underside of leaves. These images are restful because they are orderly, and because order here is kind rather than strict. You do not need to control the images. You only need to allow them a gentle passage. If a thought intrudes with a sharper edge, imagine setting it near the railing you repaired, then laying a strip of bamboo across it so that it does not roll away into your sense of calm. There will be a point where words become unnecessary because the body has taken up more of the attention than the mind, and that point is welcome. In anticipation of this, notice the sensations that are easiest to track. The warmth at the inner elbow, the faint stick of moss against the back of the knee, the way the breath pauses naturally at the top of inhalation and at the end of exhalation. These little landmarks are reliable and gentle. Memories you can return to when the night feels too porous. Hold them lightly, as if they were shells you bring to your ear to hear the sea. They hold a sound that is comforting and not demanding. If it helps, repeat softly to yourself a single anchor word: stitch, light, rest, choosing whichever feels like a small offering to the body in that moment. Do not purse it into a mantra beyond your comfort. Rather, let it be like a small pebble that sits in your mouth of thought and keeps the tongue from tasting sharp anxieties. Let this word synchronize with your breath. A quiet inhalation with stitch, a slower exhale with light, a longer settling breath with rest. Over time, you may feel the word become unnecessary because the body and the grove have already made the same arrangements. The keeper now moves away slowly, the lanterns trailing little halos behind their steps, and eventually the sound of their motion becomes a distant, dependable rustle. Their departure is not abandonment, but completion of a shared action. The path is mended, the lights are set, and for every foot that will come this way after you there will be a small ease that your presence has witnessed. This knowledge can be comforting. Sometimes the best solace is to realize that both you and many small hands in the world practice the same kind of attentions, and that this practice accumulates into a quieted environment. You let your attention expand outward in a broad, soft sweep now, feeling the atmosphere rather than dissecting it. The lanterns blur into a chain of warm beads. The bamboo becomes a gentle wall of breathing trees. The river is a hush that lives behind everything like a supportive blanket. The grove does not ask you to perform. It simply offers a place to dissolve into its proportions. Allow yourself to be included in that offering. Let your muscles loosen further, as if you could fold into the earth like a letter being closed. Where earlier you might have clutched at the edges of thoughts, now you might try a simple permission. It is enough to rest. Say it once or twice quietly to yourself. There is no implication that you must resolve everything before sleep. The grove's lesson is that small acts of care make a larger field hospitable, and that you are permitted to rest within that field whether or not every knot is tied. Your breath deepens in consonance with that permission. The inhale like a gathering of cool linen, and the exhale like the soft settling of that linen over your shoulders. In the diminishing light, you notice the textures the lanterns have revealed. The underside of a leaf with its pale veins, the minute moss that clings to a stone like a careful stitch, the polished curve of a pebble smoothed by years of river passing. These textures are small. They require attention, not labor. If a random memory surfaces, treat it like one of these textures. Observe its edge, allow its color, and then let it rest back into the field of things you have noticed. You do not have to catalog or argue with it. The grove's light has taught you a softer form of engagement. As the final minutes of your vigil in the clearing pass, the pace of the world and your internal pace draw nearer together. The breath becomes longer still, the spaces between inhalation and exhalation widening like a gentle theater curtain opening. If you are comfortable doing so, allow your body to sink a little further into the moss, feeling how the earth absorbs pressure and returns a mild, uninsistent lift. Notice how the shoulders move away from the ears, how the jaw unclenches, how the face loses the fine lines of alertness. These are subtle but reliable shifts. Attend to them with an approving softness. When ready, allow your eyes to close. Eyes closed, the grove continues its work around you. The lanterns keep their patient vigil. The river hums its steady count, and the bamboo sways in its deliberate breathing. You do not need to watch for the small, completed repairs now. Their effect is registered in the steadiness under your body and in the measured quality of your breath. If thoughts come, imagine laying them along the path and walking slowly past, feeling them become smaller with distance. If images arise, let them pass like lanterns moving along the avenue, visible for a moment, then sliding away into space. There is a final ribbon of imagery to carry you across the threshold into deeper rest. Imagine the grove arranging itself like a quilt over the world. Each lantern a tiny patch sewn with care, each stitch a small intention. Your concerns are part of this quilt now, not hidden but held. They are loops and seams, worked through with attention rather than left ragged at the edge. You are permitted to loosen your hold on them, to let them become part of a larger fabric where they are supported by the weight of the whole. As you let go, offer one last soft consideration to your body. A note of thanks, perhaps, or the brief recognition of how far it has carried you today. Gratitude here is not a grand ceremony, but a tiny folding of attention inward, a closing of the hand around something small and pleasing. Breathe in the cool of the leaves. Breathe out a warmth that comes from inside you. The grove holds you as if you were a small, secret thing it had promised to keep. When the urge for sleep arrives, do not attempt to measure it or hurry it along. Simply allow the closing of your awareness to be gentle. The lanterns will remain. They're light enough for the path and not demanding more than that. The river will continue its mild reckoning of stones. The keeper will have taken their leave into the night, the motion of their steps becoming part of the grove's long background. You are allowed now to loosen entirely into the slow, unfinaled rest that the body craves. If this midnight walk has offered you a small easing, a rearrangement of sharpness into softer shapes, then you may carry that easing with quiet care through the hours ahead. There is no need to promise yourself miracles. The grove asks for modest things: breath, attention, the willingness to mend small edges when you notice them. Let these modesties be enough. Allow the pattern of light to hold for you as it holds for others who come after this night. If this midnight walk soothed you, a quiet like or a gentle subscription helps bring more nights like this into the world. Rest now. Let the breath lengthen, let the shoulders fall, let the mind fold its hands and lay down. The lanterns fade softly into your periphery as your inner sight narrows to the warmth in your chest, and the grove's sounds, bamboo, river, insect chorus, become the slow, reliable music that carries you further into sleep. Good night.